Now we're going to talk about strings. It's one of the data types available in Python. So if you run this, what do you expect to see? So Z is set to a string, right? We already talked about this briefly before. How do we know it's a string? Because it's enclosed within a pair of single quotes or a pair of double quotes. It makes no difference in Python. So this could have been written like so. And if you run this, it tells you that the type of Z is string. So Python is able to determine the type of variable Z from what is stored in it. Like we said, Python is dynamically typed, and that's precisely what that means. And you can actually write a statement saying print Z, and it will print whatever is stored in Z, which is hello. Here we do a similar operation, right? We perform a similar operation. Hello world is stored into my string variable. The name of the string is not what determines what data type it is. What is stored in it is what determines. So you could have stored this as WXYZ. It doesn't matter. And you can store an integer in a variable called my string, right? So the data type of what is stored in the variable is what determines the variable's data type and not the name. So if you run this, hello world gets stored in, actually this one first. Hello world gets stored in my string, and when you print it out with this print statement, it prints hello world. Instead of having two lines, you can separate the two commands that you would have put on separate lines like shown here. So you can use a semicolon and then put the two lines on one string. This is totally equivalent to doing this, in which case this semicolon is redundant. So this is fine, and putting a semicolon here and moving the second line to the same single line works in the same manner. So this is two separate commands. The first prints what is stored in my string, which is hello world. The second gets the length of my string, and that's the number of characters stored in my string. So if you count it, H is 1, E is 2, L is 3, L is 4, O is 5. The space, that blank space, is a character. That's the sixth one. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there are 11 characters. That's what len gets you. So len is inbuilt in Python. As you can see, we didn't have to import anything to use it. So if we were importing a package, it would have been package.len, right? But because you don't see anything in front of it, so it's built into Python just like the print statements or the type statements. Good, so you run this, it prints out hello world and the length of my string, which is 11. If you do length of my string, print a length of my string, it will print 11, right? So the length of my string is not printed. The last line is what is printed in Python. So again, this is equivalent to this. The first statement is not printed. The last line is printed, and this is specifically because you have the print statement. Good. Nothing special here. The important thing, which is very important in Python, is to realize that all collections, and by collections I mean data types that contain multiple data sets. So I mean data types like arrays, data types like lists, which we're going to talk about next, tuples. They contain more than one item in them. And so because they contain more than one item in them, you will need to be able to access the different items in these collections. So string is like a collection because it contains multiple characters in it. So you can get the value stored in each of the indices of these characters by putting a square bracket and specifying the index you want. So here, I can use the keyboard. Here you're asking for the first index. So the big point to remember is that indexing starts at 0 in Python. not at 1. So if you want the first member of the collection, the first item in the collection, you will put an index of 0. If you want the second item, you will put an index at 1. So I like to ask this in the short quizzes, right? So I'll ask you for what, I can ask for what this line will print, the first line here. You can separate this once again. So what do you think is going to print? The first index is at 0, so it will print H, right? Because hello world is what is stored in my string. So print H, then it will print E, the second item, which is at index 1, right? If you ask for index 10, it's going to print the 11th item. Why? Because indexing starts at 0. And the 11th item is D, because we counted it and there were 11 characters. So what if you ask for my string at 11? It does not exist, right? So very important to always remember, in all of the collections in Python, indexing starts at where? 0. Good, so this prints exactly what we expect, H, E, and D for the 10th item. What will happen if we ask for the 11th item, which we know does not exist? Error, because it does not exist. String index out of range. So when you see anything like out of range, it means you're asking for an index that does not exist in the data or in the collection. So it's important to start getting familiar with these types of errors, so immediately you see them, you know how to fix it. So you don't freak out when you see this. This is actually useful information. It tells you how to fix the problem. Good. String slicing. You can change this right back to 10. String slicing. So we can ask for multiple indices at the same time. Here we are printing from 1 through 4. 1 is not the first, right? It's the second, because indexing starts at 0. And the interesting thing to note about Python is this is going to give you the index at 1, 2, 3. It doesn't get to 4, so the upper bound is not included. So it starts at 1 and stops at 3. This one doesn't specify where it starts at, so that means it will start at 0 from the first element in the collection. So it starts at 0 and it will stop where? Before 5, right? 5 will not be included, so it will stop at 4. This one starts at 1, meaning it will ignore the 0th index, right? Which is the first member. It will start at the second member of the collection, and there is nothing specified on the right of the column, so it gets all the way to the end. So what do you think 1 to 4 will give you? Noting that what you have stored in my string is what? Hello world. So H is at index 0. E is at index 1. So it will show E, L, and L. Because the second L is at index 3, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. It doesn't get to 4 because in Python you don't get to the upper bound. It's not inclusive of the upper range. Got it? Good. And then the second line will start all the way from H because there is nothing to the left, and stop at the 4th index. So it will go 0, index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there will be 5 items in it. So this will be, I can use my keyboard. This will be index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will print out hello. And the last one will start at index 1, which is the second member, because indexing starts at 0. So it will start from E and go all the way to world. So it will be hello world without the H. So you can run this and convince yourself that all of our explanations are valid. Control Enter. And that's what you see here. You can use a string splitting command, which is you grab the name of the string dot split, and you open and close the parentheses, indicating it's a function. So it's a function specified in Python for strings. So the name of the string dot split, and you open and close parentheses. by default, it will split using the space character as pointed out here. So you have hello space world, right? So it will split along the space, and that means hello will be stored in S1 and world will be stored in S2. And we can print both of them, which is why we have print S1, print S2. And then we set A to hello world. Maybe we can run it first and see line by line what the result look like. So print S1 prints hello, print S2 prints world, because you split the hello world along the space that was separating them. Another string A is set to hello comma world, right? So you can actually put an argument in this function. So what you put in a parenthesis right after a function name is the argument of the function. So it generally gives information on what the function should do. So in this case, you're providing a comma and it's saying split the string, but instead of splitting it by the space, split it by the comma. So that will mean you will have hello and then you have a space world this time around. Previously, when we split it by without an argument, we split it by the blank space, and it took out the blank space and then gave you the two strings in S1 and S2. This time around, it will give you two strings still to take out the comma because that's the delimiter. And then the second string, which is S4 in this case, will be space before world. And that's what you see here. Hello, and then space before world. So S3, we'll use the F formatted string here for this first, for the third line here. S3 is hello, and S4 is world. And if you notice, there is an extra space in front here because you're split it by comma. And it takes out the comma but doesn't take out the space. There is also the replace function. So it's going to replace the string, the character H in hello world with J. That's what this does. And then we print it out on one line. And so what you have will be jello world. And you can run the statement and that's your output. And I'll stop here and continue in the next video.